Hi, everybody. Welcome back to National Association of Adoptees and Parents Adoption Happy Hour. And I'm happy to be back as your guest host for an episode here. My name is Greg Gentry. I'm a domestic baby scoop era adoptee from California. And it's my honor to be able to introduce you to a wonderful guest here tonight in just a moment, Anita Garber. So before we do that, I just wanted to get with a couple of our typical items here for starting off, which is, again, a reminder of the type of space that we are. Our intent as the National Association of Adoptees and Parents is to provide a mission of unity throughout the adoption community, elevating diverse voices, promoting dialogue, understanding, and healing through education, awareness, and connection. It's really great to have everybody here. There are some things that we, of course, do as part of our housekeeping. So let me read a little bit of those here for you. Please remain on mute and do raise your hand on screen or virtually when you do have a question. And we ask that you reserve those for the Q&A session after the recording of the interview here that we'll have with Anita. And please do use the chat and post comments and questions you may have in there. Those are always great also to pass on to the guest to see what people were talking about. And also we come back to them when it is time for Q&A just to make sure no one's overlooked if you do have a question. If you are experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thoughts, please contact a licensed professional or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by dialing 988. A reminder that this is a public meeting and there is no guarantee that information or identity is confidential, and portions of this event are recorded and may be shared in our private happy hour group on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. So Beth, I'm wondering if we have any housekeeping.
I have one more slide I'm going to bring up. Okay, we like to remind you about NAAP's regularly programming. Happy Hour comes to you the first and the third Friday of each month. A variety of guests with lots of stories and experiences that we all enjoy hearing and learning from. We have 3 other programs. Earlier this week, Dr. Joyce's Putting Yourself Together After Reunion met. It's on a Tuesday, usually the second or the third Tuesday. She works us into her schedule, so she will be back again in November. And she is so adept at all things reunion and very, very helpful conversations during that program. We also have First Families facilitated by Amy Seek. That comes to us the second Thursday of each month. So they've already met for October, but they will be back again in November. And we hear lots and lots of good things from that program as well. And then each month we close out with Migrating Toward Wholeness and Dr. Liz's program, and they will actually meet next week on Thursday. And it's a program where they use writing. They actually are doing some writing prompts on First Families too, but lots of good opportunities, as you can see, to meet with the adoption community each month. Anytime that you register for an event, you will get email notices about future episodes of that particular thing. And if you've come to everything, you're going to be getting all sorts of notices about all of the things we have. And we hope to see you around a lot. And that is all I have, Greg.
Great. Thank you so much, Beth. And it's my pleasure to welcome to Adoption Happy Hour, Anita Garber. Let me read to you a little bit about Anita. Anita is a worship leader, a licensed social worker, transracial adoptee, and a smoothie enthusiast. She's dedicated to educating, equipping, and empowering people on their journeys toward healing, wholeness, and discovering their God-given identities. Anita has created an 8-week devotional called Wading in the Waves, designed to support adoptees and those touched by adoption in navigating grief, trauma, identity, and healing through a spiritual and faith-based approach. Welcome to Happy Hour, Anita.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you guys.
Great. We're excited to have you. And really, we were just talking before we started here that it'd be really wonderful to get into parts of your story or aspects of it you'd like to share. So if I may, I just would like to lead you a little bit through that. And why don't we start, I guess, at the beginning of this. How old were you when you were adopted, Anita?
I was 4. My twin sister and I were adopted together at the age of 4. Live in South Central Pennsylvania. Grew up in a small conservative family. There's 6 of us all together. when we all get together, since everybody is married and has kids, there's 25 to 26 of us. So it's makes for big family reunions and get-togethers. But being adopted, I think what I want to start out, if I can read something that kind of expresses
Sure.
my perspective on adoption growing up. And I apologize for the background noise. But it's called Hey Adoption. And I think this gives a really good snapshot of my lens growing up and my perspective of adoption as like a first and second, third, fourth grader, navigating lack of attachment. I was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder in second grade and went through counseling for 10 to 11 years and felt like everything had a box. But I really feel like this kind of gives a framework and words to something I can't really tell you about, but I can paint you a picture. So hey, adoption, you're like a broken heart on life support that needs frequent resuscitation, CPR, and a transplant. No one told me that you could be born with a broken heart. I was always told never to give it away, but you cannot own what you do not have. Yet there I was, 4 years old with a broken heart, apnea monitor in hand, too little to know that you can't call 911 when your chest begins to beat like the way my dad pumped the brakes on my parents' car, brakes which had gone out the previous fall. Hey, adoption, let's be honest with each other and admit there is no 911 for someone like me who was born brokenhearted and at age 4 had a heart transplant. The doctor said the transplant was to increase my life expectancy, that this will fix her, make her normal, make her better, make her comply and fit in, not stray or color outside of the lines of right and wrong with Crayolas and childish curiosity, which taught me that everything in life has a limit, including life itself, and that adults always think they know what's best for you without stopping to talk with you, because there's no sign that says emergency than a 4, 5, 6-year-old who doesn't know her numbers, who hasn't learned how to count, because 1, 2, 3 sounds like please help me, and 4, 5, 6 not good enough yet, so 8, 9, 10 ain't done, not dead yet, and a person who wasn't present for most of my life, yet the expectation placed on me with the heart that I would be something I never had was something I wasn't born with. 911 will tell you that transplants will change your life expectancy. And so there I was at 4 years old with a ruler in one hand, apnea monitor in the other, hands too full to reach out, ask for friends, ask to learn how to play, how to dance or sing. And so I learned to believe that I was alone and that I needed to become something other to fit in, and that relationships coincide with manipulation, and distance was best if I wanted the breath in my lungs to move and my chest to rise and fall. Yet all institutions want to teach you how to read, and writing is required. When I put pen to paper, I bleed. Hey, adoption. I was born broken-hearted and expected to be whole.
Wow, that it just makes me feel lots of emotion to hear that, and I like to scroll through and see the expressions of people in the gallery as they hear things like this that are so powerfully read, and yeah, that conveys so much feeling and so much sentiment. May I ask when you wrote that?
I was privileged to be a part of Adoptee Voices writing group. I believe it was 4 years ago, in one of
Okay.
their first cohorts with Sarah Easterly and Jennifer Diane
Yeah.
Gosen. And that was really, 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 really helpful to process some unprocessed emotions and memories. And yeah, so it was really
Yeah.
good space.
How does it feel to read something like that in a space that's predominantly here adoptees? And I don't know if you're able to see the expressions, but it was
Yeah,
really powerful.
I feel like, and I'm not quite sure I've tried to process this, but I feel like there's things that you can touch only in certain circles. Like outside of, I don't know that I would have been able to write this had I not been in the Adoptee Voices writing group. Like I don't know how to connect with the entirety of all of those feelings and all of those emotions and all of those experiences in a consistent, cohesive, ongoing with everybody. So I feel like it's really meaningful and it's moving to be in spaces where there's shared understanding and shared experiences.
I think that's really very clearly said, and I think that's one of the main purposes of a group, a space like NAAP, is to provide that commonality of experience and also to open up to people. Some people are able to look in also and see what sort of things are being shared, but gives us like a unified strength in a way, right? And a boldness to be able to speak like that. So thank you. That was really very moving. And I wrote down some things as you were reading it. And I know we've talked about maybe a progression through the interview of a sequential thing, but those can be kind of dull, right? There's a lot that spontaneously, as I listened here, I wrote down some things. I learned to believe I was alone. That was one of the things I wrote.
Yeah.
And yet you were with your sister. Is that true? Is that correct?
Yeah, we were adopted together.
Yeah.
Four other siblings. I feel like with where trauma-based therapy was in the early 90s, what I was faced with on a weekly basis was I was given a box of, you can feel happy, sad, mad, or scared, scale of 1 to 10. Why? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And I don't know was not an answer. And so I felt like I was alone because what I wasn't enough to fit in the box. And I had to check the box, but I wasn't the box. And so I lived my life through the lens of survival. And so in third grade, I created a list of 16 characteristics and modified my behavior to become this person because this person was okay. This person was seen. This person saw the people in the corners. This person showed up. This person was safe. This person didn't get in trouble. This person wasn't other. This person wasn't alone. Like this was the person that everybody wanted, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't have to live my life alone, yet my heart was so far away. Like I still lived in isolation, but I appeared to play the part.
It must have felt very performative, right? Like you have to stick with this and then you'll be okay or more okay or have a better chance of not just survival, but maybe of fitting in and assimilating in ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's amazing that you were so young and so analytical of what, I mean, you mentioned all these categories that somebody was able to break those things down and see that there were maybe it's a measurement of your life that whole time. Like I don't measure up, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there are things I need to adjust in order to feel like I fit. And once you had made all those adjustments, did it feel like something you had to work really hard to keep in place?
Oh my
Did it feel
goodness,
natural at all?
yes.
Yeah,
All my energy went into like maintaining this false sense of self because
all self.
if I
Yep.
let any part of it go, then I'd get in trouble or I wasn't okay. And yeah, things didn't
Yeah.
go well then.
It's exhausting, right? And
Very,
the people
yes.
around you come to expect it, right? Maybe they think you're really like that. And do you feel
Or
like
yeah,
they
or
believe that was who you were?
yeah, I feel like I fooled a lot of people. Um,
Hmm.
not my family, but
Okay, that's what I was always interested in is whether they were thinking that was the case too or no.
yeah.
So if you take a persona like that and you're and you were still very young, right? You came up with this pretty young age. So that's a lot of years for having to hold that together and probably wearing you down the whole time. Is there a certain point where you said, "Oh, this isn't okay. This is too much. I put this on myself and it's not working." Did that point ever occur for you?
Oh, that's a challenging question. I feel like that happened in stages because I feel like,
Sure.
so for me, I grew up in a family that I feel like I practically grew up at church because we were there
Mhm.
every time the doors were open. And my adoptive mom was a worship leader, and my dad was involved in church leadership, and just extended family was always at church. So at the same time, I was going through counseling. Um, I had an experience with God in church, and it felt like I felt like I was being hugged, like physically, like this presence was hugging me. And I knew that I was safe. I knew that I was okay. And I knew that I was understood when I didn't have to say anything. Like
Mhm.
me and myself in whatever way I was okay. And I was safe. And it felt like home. And so that was kind of, I was like, this is interesting. To have a place of safety, to have a place that feels like home when you don't feel okay to be you in any other situation in any other circumstance was really huge. And I feel like I had a near-death experience in 6th grade. I almost drowned in a rip current. And because I was like, hey God, like my parents believe in you, so I don't have time. I know that I'm like gone if you don't show up. And I said, so for sake of time, let's just assume that you exist. If you save me, I'll do anything, go anywhere, that kind of thing. Next thing I knew, someone was pulling me towards shore, which set me on a journey for like, okay, why am I here? I know enough about you to know that you are a God of intention. You don't do anything without a reason. So like, why did you save me? Which sent me on a journey, and on that journey, had lots of mentors. Um, so I feel like the mentors that I was given gave me space, and really encouraged me to like show up and be like, wherever you go, Anita, there you are. And I was like, what do you mean? Of course, like wherever I go, there I am. Yes, but like, what does that mean? Um, and who am I? And I remember there was a conversation in high school. Um, I was quasi passively suicidal, slight cutting occasionally, and I had my pocket knife in my hand, and it was sitting on top of my wrist, and I heard in my head, I heard the Lord say, I created you for more than this. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? What do you like? You created me for more than this. He's like, I didn't create you to champion an identity that was created out of fear. Like you're running let's go back to that list that you created. Some of those things are true, but you championed it out of fear. I never champion identities created out of fear. Let me show you who I created you to be. And I feel like that was a really big turning point, because then we went through the list together of being like, hey, like this person sees everybody. Like I can talk to anybody, I can be in anybody's corner, I can like I'm the person who listens to everybody about anything. Like that's a good thing, God, right? But then going through the nuances of like, okay, what are those things that are created out of a false sense of self, and what are the true parts of that? And I really feel like that gave birth to a lot of freedom and healing, and yeah, just being able to be like, be okay being me, like actually stepping into being like, who am I, like who am I actually, and what does it look like to actually just show up as me and not pretend to be a social chameleon and meet everybody's needs and be the person that everybody needs.
So the first word for you that came to you, these were words of acceptance, of spiritual impact, of acceptance, and what a difference that makes when that's the initial perception of transcendence versus something more judgmental, for example, that unfortunately can also happen. But I'm gonna tip my hand a little bit and tell you my training is in theology. So I'll sit with you a little bit in this. I won't go into great depth here, but I heard a lot of things in here that reminded me of some of the great theologians of the 20th century, Martin Luther King, Paul Tillich, his message of acceptance, of you're okay. And even this providence for you of being pulled out of the wave, right? Out of his drowning, and understanding that it set you on a course of understanding, self-understanding. And you were able to see that a lot of the things on your list were good things, right? Those were things people really might genuinely aspire to be and to want to have as part of their character. So that's amazing. How did things unfold after you made these realizations?
I would say that they're still unfolding to this day, because I feel like, yeah, there's layers, and I think that comes back to the book. Um, but it gave more freedom to just to love people and to be loved. I feel like the biggest struggle in my life is receiving love. Um, and I can consciously like be like, okay, like I know intellectually how to receive love, but like outside of that, it's really, really hard. Like outside of it being a concept, how do you receive love? Like, what does that look like? What does it mean? Like having God, like I get that God loves us, but people loves us, but how do you receive it as a gift? Like what is all of that about? And so I feel like that really started that process. And also looking at like my earthly father, my adoptive father, I didn't know so my biological father died before I was born. And we had an open adoption and had visitation until I was 11. And then we stopped visiting because she stopped showing up. Um, and then I'm in reunion with them, but that didn't happen until like 7 years ago. But the lack of having a father, I feel like was huge, was really, really huge. And my adoptive father wasn't really present. Like he provided, like our relationship was functional. If you need something, you ask him, he'll provide it. That's it. And so I was like, what does love look like in this context? And not like I'm breaking down all the boxes of false self and just showing up to just do the thing. It's not like love is not an obligation. So what does it look like? If it's not a duty, if it's not an obligation, if it's supposed to be a delight and a joy and like this amazing thing, what is it? And how do you receive it if it's a gift, and how do you give it away? Like what does that look like, and what does it look like to give it away? And it's like talking about felt safety and like creating spaces where you feel safe and the person you're wanting to be in a relationship feels safe enough to actually figure it out. So I feel like it kind of started that whole roller coaster of like what is love and what does it look like and how do we do this thing?
Yeah, there's like this inseparable element of community and all of that, right? Because you
Mhm.
find collectively that there's something you have, as you said, not just to receive, but to give away. And the nurturing and the sustaining power of that for other people, it spreads outward and it's transformative. And wow, what a powerful story to be telling about how that was for you and how the contrast was for you. You had things provided, but you still had the lack of the importance of that connection, right? An experiential level, on a level that satisfied your soul, right? So that it's understandable that when something comes into that and is able to fill that and provide a buoyancy to you, right? Kind of a lift that fills all these areas of your life. So it sounds very, very joyous the way you're describing it.
Yeah, and I feel like because I'm a social worker, and so I got my undergrad in social work and my master's in social work, and then my first license in social work, um, and learning a lot about like looking at what my adoptive and biological families and seeing what the resources that they had that they didn't it wasn't intentional on their part what I perceived as a lack of love, but they didn't you can't give what you don't have. So if you haven't grown up with emotionally, physically present parents, you don't necessarily know how to be emotionally, physically present unless you intentionally obtain learning or put yourself in environments where you're challenged to grow and develop those skills. And so I feel like that also allowed me to look at my growing up with a lot more grace and a lot more perspective because I now knew I was like, oh, you weren't trying to not love me. Like you loved me the best you could with what you had. And you did what you could with what you had. And I can't I there's no fault in that. We all do what we can until we know better, if we know better, and if we choose to use that knowledge to grow and apply it appropriately. And so I feel like that was really, really helpful and healing for my heart because I would be like kind of a little bit bitter and resentful toward my dad. I was like, you were never present. You worked all of the time. And if we wanted to spend time with you, it was doing something you wanted us to do, not something we wanted to do. And so it brought some healing and some closure and just yeah, perspective and grace, I think, for people in process. Like we need to stop and say, okay, like look at life from their lens and understand the things and resources that they have to show up in all like sometimes it's just all you can do is show up and that's great. And I think
Mhm.
it just gave me the ability to have a lot more grace with people, family members and also clients because I work my current I currently work in a job where my role is to prevent children from being placed into foster care. So I work with a lot of biological families when the county's saying, hey, you're at risk of being placed outside of the home. And so we work with families to say, okay, what are the skills, supports, resources, things that you need in order to maintain a safe environment where everybody can live together well.
And one of the words that jumped out at me as I was reading through your the biographical intro was the word equipping. That sounds like what you're talking about here, right? You want to provide
Yes.
a way for people to know how to do this, right? If they don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. And it's educating, empowering, and equipping them.
Yeah. We kind of all go together, right? It must be, I can imagine it's all kinds of different emotions because you see everything, right? And some
Yeah,
successes and probably a lot of things also that break your heart doing that.
yeah, it's I never knew a job like this existed, and I didn't want to counsel. Like that's not my personality. It also feels like a box. I don't like boxes. I break boxes. And so with this position, I can kind of figure out whatever modality I want to use that fits the family and kind of don't have to stick with one. Like I can do whatever is like, hey, we're dealing with emotional behavioral challenges. Okay, let's do some CBT and let's figure out maybe some creative art, expressive things, and maybe if there's a diagnosis of autism, okay, let's figure out what this looks like. So it's collaborative, and I love collaboration when it comes to empowering families and educating families and strengthening families, because I feel like we're all better if we work together and understand needs and have a common goal.
Amazing to hear that. And it's such a worthy thing to want people to have, because you're talking about the integrity and the preservation of the most important people to each other. And it's probably too easily split apart in a lot of situations. And that must be
Yeah,
really hard to see.
I've worked in this role for about 2.5 years, and I've only ever seen placements occur twice. And I've probably worked with over 30 families. And that I the first one really messed me up. And I was trying to explain to my boss why I wasn't okay. And I didn't really have words, because it was never something that I don't remember being taken from my family. But something like it took me like 3 weeks to like actually be back to fully functioning, because there was part of me that I was like, I remember this. Like I don't have any memory or recollection, but my body was like, I remember this. And that was really, really, really hard. Really, really, like I was not prepared for that. And I was not prepared at all. And I didn't really know how to effectively process all of those emotions that came up with is the grief and the loss and the just like, yeah, just really deep seated grief. And like, yeah, it was really, 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 really challenging. And then, but also like I had to sit with the parents and help them process their children being taken. And I, I mean, you sit there and you listen. And if they ask, you can pray, but you sit and you listen. And that, like I don't have words for what that was like.
That's part of bringing grace to somebody too, is your presence with them through something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very spiritual to say you don't have words for it, right? They're too deep.
Yeah. So yeah, I
The
feel like
feelings.
it's not with that, but then I work with parents who don't want their kids, and that and their kids want to stay home, and that breaks my heart because I'm like, yeah, that's really hard for me to work with parents who say that they don't love their kids. There's a lot of grace and there's a lot of education in saying, hey, like, help me understand what you mean when you say that. Or what are some of the challenges that you're encountering, and how can we help mitigate that? And how can we like help you come together? Can we have a conversation with both of you or all of you and figure out like what does a win-win look like, and what does this mean? Like, what does family look like? What is important for you guys? And building from there, because I've been surprised how many parents say that they don't want their kids, and they are very, very, very serious about it. And that's really, really challenging.
Well, it's very tragic to hear. Yeah. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
never gets any easier. So at what point did you decide to develop a program?
The book?
Yes. Tell us about the book.
The book. So the book is called Waiting in the Waves. It's a 40-day journey of healing grief, identity, belonging, in the presence of God. When did I decide to write the book? I feel like it was more of a conversation of over the last 7 years of watching conversations around spirituality and adoption, and seeing God being used as a scapegoat or not being included in the conversations at all. And I was just like, this is they have it wrong, God. Like, this was just my conversation with the Lord. I was like, they have it all wrong. Not that I have the end all be all, but I was like, you're not being portrayed correctly. And so for me, because God has always been a safe place, I was like, he's like, you're okay, you're gonna write a book. I'm like, yeah, but it's not gonna be my story. Like, that's not me. I do spoken word things and I play guitar. I don't like that's just how I do things. And so I was trying to figure out and processing with the Lord of like, okay, what is this gonna look like? If it's gonna be a book, we're gonna have to be creative, and it's gonna have to be a very unique thing, because the way my brain works, I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being told how to do things. It's just, so I was like, okay, so we're gonna write a devotional, because for me, God is safe. And part of the reason I think I'm here on this planet is to help people heal and discover the Lord. And so I had read a book called Seven Core Issues on Adoption and Permanency, which I absolutely love. If you haven't read it, get it. It will probably save you and your family a whole lot of heartache and challenges. Because I understood me a whole lot better by reading it and understanding how I process grief and some of the things that come up with different life circumstances. And I was like, oh, this makes me make a whole lot more sense. This is helpful. And so, for those of you who aren't familiar with the book, it kind of it's a framework for adoption and permanency, which basically goes through 7 different things: loss, rejection, guilt and shame, grief, identity, intimacy, mastery, and control, and kind of explains how adoption and trauma kind of impact all of those things and how we process through them and through every life developmental stage, every milestone, and gives you some really helpful suggestions of how to process and navigate through these things when they come up. And so I kind of took those 7 things and I added 8. I added God, and I framed it as kind of taking a trip to the beach, because I was like, this was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, was being almost drowning. So I'm going to just flip that on its head and have you take a trip to the beach. So the first week is the boardwalk. And so what is the boardwalk? You see all the important signs. So the boardwalk is the like Jesus, God, Holy Spirit, your perspective of, oh, and the Garden of Eden. We start in the garden. And you talk about God in all of who he is. And then we walk through grief, and I termed it the sand. And then we walk through like rejection and intimacy and identity. And part of it, yes, I shared part of my story, but I also rewrote portions of scripture, like the story of the woman at the well. I resonate with her so, so, so much, of like questionable past and encountering Jesus, and he knows everything about her, and she has a testimony, and then people come and encounter Jesus. And I was like, yep, yes, that fits quite well. Then the story of the prodigal sons, and looking at how each son viewed the father and how the father viewed the son, and all of those different things. The woman caught in adultery, and looking at the stones, I was thinking one of the things that for me has been really, really important is forgiveness. And as I was writing the book, um, I'm a visual person, so I get lots of pictures. I see in pictures, and I envisioned a circle of adoptees and adoptive parents and biological parents at the center, and all of us had stones, and you could see that they were wounded, and the stones all had words on them. And I felt like the Lord was like, "Are you going to ask them to drop their stones? Can we drop our stones? Can we read off our stones and release them from what we've been holding against them?" And so it's helping us find healing. It's helping us not be other and not like drop all of our false identities. And really, it's kind of like a self-help book, but with the Lord and just processing trauma. And it's a kind of a creative arts journal, because there's like, you're going to bake a cake, you're going to finger paint, you're going to write a lament, you're going to do all of these different things, but it's just to help you heal, help you discover God, and just help you find freedom. And so I feel like that was, yeah, the last 7 years. And part of that was being in reunion with my biological family. I went down Atlanta, Georgia, 7 years ago. A friend and I were traveling down, and my birth mom, who had been contacting us every birthday, Christmas, whenever she felt like it, said, "Hey, I'm like 5 minutes down the road. You want to pop in?" Oh, okay, sure, great. So we popped in, and I met my biological grandmother, who I didn't know existed. I was like, "This is awesome."
Wow.
Um, and an uncle that I didn't know that existed. So my biological mom was one of nine. And at that point there were 8 of them living. And so I met them, and then I came back home, and 13 days later my grandma passed. And so me and my twin sister and my adoptive parents all went down for the funeral, and I met the other 7 siblings and 31 of the 64 first cousins, and we just had a party. And it was odd. It was really, really odd, because I didn't feel like I didn't know who I was going into that. But when I came home, the phrase that was on my mind was, "I make sense. I now make sense." Like, I get me. I get my creative desires and giftings and all of these things, like, because she's 8 sisters, and they are all very creative, very strong, independent, determined women who are a force to be reckoned with. But what I also loved about that was, I was a little concerned about being in a reunion, because I don't like unmet expectations. Like, if someone has expectations of me, I like meeting them, and I like exceeding them. Like, it's a thing that I'm working on. And I didn't know what it was going to be like with meeting them and what their expectations. But what they said was like, "Anita, we've always loved you, and we always will. The door is always open to have whatever relationship you want. If you want to see us, if you want to come down for birthdays, if you like want to come down for family reunions, like, we love you regardless of what you choose. You have always been loved, and you will always be loved." And that was so healing. That was so healing. And so it's been great. Like, they'll call me every other month, or when one of my aunts just turned 70 and had a denim party in Atlanta, and they send invitations and all the things. So it's been really healing, and it's been actually really fun to just get to know them now in this stage of life.
I used the word odd. It was very odd. I haven't heard anyone use that to describe, because I thought, okay, she's building towards this and this. It's very odd, but it was all the self-understanding, right? Just
Yeah.
it's like an exegesis of yourself, right? These are the elements that fit together better for you now about who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I think the
powerful.
other part of that is so my mother's so I was my mother was in a relationship with a married man, and who would be my biological father. And I reached out to his children recently and was like, "Hey, I want to get to know you." What does this look like? And kind of, as I showed a little bit earlier, I kind of create word pictures much better than explaining things. So I'm going to read something and then I'll explain a little bit about it, because it's the other side of connect what connection can also look like or not look like.
Yeah.
So it's called constellations. Black holes. According to NASA, a black hole is a place in space where gravity pulls so much that even light cannot get out. Gravity is so strong because matter has been squeezed into a tiny space. This can happen when a star is dying. Planets don't send rockets to Earth. We send rockets to the moon. You don't know that I exist. I was born after death and lived in what comes next. Our father who gave me life died before he could see my face. And here on Earth, we send rockets to the moon. I feel like Mars is a foreign planet, or the moon, something not quite out of sight, something just beyond reach, yet it's the reality that's not yet our experience. And that's how I feel when I want to write to you the words hello. Yet I've written hello 1,000 times, and no one on Mars ever says hi, so hello seems a little too friendly. It's like the year Pluto's a planet, only next year to be a foreign object, so I don't really want to be too friendly in my greetings and salutations. I want to be sweet and short, concise and soft. I'm the Pluto you never knew, connected to the light of the moon that reflected the light of the sun in which you grew up in, that which nourished you and gave you life, about which rose before my dawn and set before my rise. Maybe that's why alarm clocks and I have always had a love-hate relationship. I wake before them and they go on way too long. And hitting snooze was never my prerogative because I set 10 alarm clocks and the last one was just a little too late. Am I a little too late? Planets don't tell time. They revolve in space and have no face in which to look upon like a clock. So I was unsure in my letter to say hi, hello. If I wanted to send you a picture, if that would be a little too on the nose. And I wasn't quite sure if I could place your face if you looked more like him or more like her who I've never seen. And I wanted to be short and sweet, not on the nose. I don't want to upright the light that you created for yourself and your family for 68 years. To say hi, I'm the sister you never knew you had with the mistress you didn't know existed, because planets don't send rockets to Earth. We Earthlings send rockets to the moon, and part of me feels like Rocket Man was out of place, but in a different space, and got kind of lost in up Pluto, which is for the moment being called a planet. It's a recognized reality of substance with some gravity, so I wasn't quite sure to say hi or hello, and I didn't know if this would interrupt your gravity or recognition of reality due to the substance and weight of this reality, and then you would be spinning out of orbit, which means we would lose Pluto this year. But planets don't send rockets to Earth. We send rockets to the moon in 68 and 72. Man a rocket on the moon, the Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong centered by Saturn V nearly half a century ago. The monumentous space race. To that which we recognize as unknown and unconquered, time in space. Planets don't send rockets to Earth. We send rockets to the moon. Time in space. Gravitational mass, velocity, and volume. I don't want to take your time. I don't want to take the gravitational mass to cause a black hole, cause your light to dim or pack your sphere with mass. Because Google tells me that you've been a bright light in a lot of worlds, and my adoptive mother always taught me to be polite in my conversations. And introductions by say hi, Anita, or hello. And so I decided to say hi. This may come as a shock to you. I don't want to wreck your world or cause a black hole, but I need some information on my father. I didn't tell you that you were related, or that you're my half sister and I'm 4 decades younger than you, or the fact that I was a star born in the light of his passing, or that I'm a rarity, one of two, or that I've known about you for a little while now, because a little high and I'm out of sight, a little too much and I'm no longer a planet, a little too much gravitational mass and we're both gone. And you know, planets don't send rockets to Earth. We send rockets to the moon. And so I reached out to what would have been my biological sisters and didn't get any response. And then I called them and sent a letter and got no response. And then I recently learned of their passing. And that was kind of a bummer. I was like, it would have been, I think, really, really healing and really rewarding to get to know them. But and sometimes, yeah, they don't, relationships are not everybody's priority, and sometimes you have to be okay with that. You have to, yeah, be okay with that. But I found it was really, really, even reaching out was healing in and of itself, and kind of, yeah, brought some closure to some questions, because I didn't really explore like any of the aspects of my biological father, like what that relationship would have looked like, until I was in counseling 9 years ago, and my counselor was like, "So Anita, today we're gonna paint a lament, and you're gonna paint a lament about your biological father." And I was like, "I have nothing to say, nothing, nothing. There's nothing there. Nope." She's like, "Are you sure?" Like I hear what you're saying, but I respectfully disagree with you. How about you're gonna just pick a color? We're gonna start with you picking a color, and you're gonna paint. Just use one color and paint. And if you decide to use more, feel free. But we're gonna spend 45 minutes doing this. It's like there's no way. I have nothing to say. Um, but I was wrong. I was so wrong. And it was so like I never thought of him. Like he didn't, I never like my first thought, which I was like, this is really wrong thought. But anyhow, I was like, how can you grieve someone you never knew? And I was like, oh, you can. It's so possible. And I feel like most of us do it all the time, which causes a whole lot of other challenges. But anyhow, that's beside the point. Um, it was so healing to like paint and like then I could talk out loud and be like, I wonder this about you, and you missed this birthday, and you missed this, and I want to know this, like all of the missed experiences, all of the missed memories, all of the missed, yeah, relational connections. It was really, really, really healing. So for those of you who really get tired of words, I would really encourage you get some paint, either finger paints or great, um, and yeah, paint.
I think I might have to take you up on that. I've always assumed I can't do anything creative like that. Wow, the way you are able to use language and spatial expression, and it's really unique. It's really wonderful. And I'm reading people in the chat thinking it's really incredible to listen to these word pictures, as you said, you paint here. There's so much to think about in there. And yeah, it's a very, very interesting way of getting it out, but I feel like it's really effective and just want to keep listening to it. So thank you for sharing those with us. And it's too bad that they had passed. Yeah, that is hard when you said sometimes relationships aren't a priority for, that's just an absolute reality, but I think I dodge it all the time with biological family. Like maybe I want to convince myself, no, they just don't have time. But there really are, unfortunately, sometimes when cases where it's not a priority for them, or they can't keep it a priority. Maybe they try to, but it goes off out of the center of their screen because they're not used to us being there or existing. Or how do you make room for people that you didn't even know existed? I always wish they would, but I guess I can't make them. Maybe it's time to do some finger painting. Wow. I wanted to ask you one thing about the impact of the way you've presented or put together the devotional and the way people have used it. So I think I saw online that maybe on Amazon that it didn't necessarily have adoption in the title, but I think as you've expressed the full title of it, it does. And I don't know if that's intentional, or did you intend for it specifically to be for adopted people and then other people would also benefit from it, or what was the intention behind that?
Yes. Yeah, I feel like the reason I titled this "Wading in the Waves of Adoption" is because people hear "wading the waves" and they're like, "What are we like? What is the thing that we're wading in?" But I feel like those who have gone through the adoption and foster care experience resonate a lot with people in the church who have been challenged or struggled with identity, or what we commonly call like an orphan victim mentality, orphan spirit. And I realized that a lot of what I'd gone through was it's really orphan to sonship, which I felt like would resonate with a lot of the church. Um, and so that's kind of why I was like, okay, yes, this is for adoptees, but also for the church. Because I have a lot of friends in the church who are struggling to figure out who they are. and they have similar traumas to those of us who've been in the adoption and foster care situations. And I feel like, yeah, like, okay, so we have a lot of different experiences, but the roots are the same. And so let's start and let's help each other grow. Let's help each other. Let's equip, let's empower, let's educate, and let's find healing together. Because I feel like that's also something that we can lose out on, is being like, I have this experience and I'm the only one in this experience, when really there's a lot of similar roots and a lot of similar experiences. And healing, as we know, relational healing happens in relationships, and we lose out if we choose to not put ourselves in some of those collaborative spaces that prioritize healing, that prioritize hope, that prioritize collaborative experiences to find common goals.
Wow, that too. Again, stresses that one of the things that I'm always talking about is community. Because communities are communities of interpretation, of meaning, of safety, of being seen. There's a reflection that happens in the community. With as much as we talk about genetic mirroring, there's also reflection in communities of people who've had a common experience, or even if they haven't, if they at least learn to hold space for people who have had a different experience. That's incredible too. That's another sign of a work of grace for somebody, when a person gets to the point they can do that for somebody else, even if they can't relate to it, maybe not, can barely understand it, if they can at least have the capacity to exist there with you. And it makes a huge difference, I think.
When we prioritize understanding over agreement, or having to have the same experience, I feel like that's when healing and conversations and like great healing happens and can begin, and where people can truly feel safe, is when, like, you might not agree with me, but you're not here to agree, you're here to understand. And I feel like when understanding is prioritized, then you can, like, you develop trust, you develop feelings of safety and security and resilience and all of these things. So yes, holding space and prioritizing understanding.
What a terrific conversation. Can you let us know how people can find you? Social
Well,
media?
that's a hard question, because I'm not really um out there. But if you want
That's fine
to
too.
reach if you want to reach out, my email is waitinginthewaves@gmail.com. Yeah, because I'm not really on things.
Yeah. And it's usually a habit of asking people, because sometimes, a lot of us are in ways, but it's totally fine not to be too. I can tell that you're making an impact because of the strength of this devotional content and the way you express yourself. And I'm sure that all the families you're working with are greatly benefiting from
So one note about it, if I
graceful
can add.
person. Yeah, go ahead.
So the one comment, I didn't really answer your last question, but the most reoccurring comment that I've gotten about the book is that it's a process. So I had one friend start the book about 3 months ago, and it's 8 weeks, which might have 4 days in it. It might have 6 days in it. I realized that I didn't count right but there's 40 days and there's 8 weeks. And she started it 3 months ago and is currently on the second week. And she's like, Anita, this is making me process. This is making me take time. Like, I had to put this on the shelf for like 2 months and like ask myself some really hard questions. And that's kind of the point of it. So just be prepared that if you get the book, it's a process, and to take time and be present with yourself as you process.
That's great. And that's very, very important in a culture that values plowing through material and getting to the bottom. And I can be guilty of that, but also can be somebody who takes years to read a book that most people get through in a weekend. And including some adoption books that I'll read a couple paragraphs and I have to put it down. Like you said, it's just, okay, I need time now. And that's okay. I feel like getting the benefit out of that because I know it's redirecting how I think and opening up possibilities for me, things I hadn't considered. So yeah, that's a great guide that you've offered here for how to interpret what your work is about and how to read it, how to work through it also as I know I described it as a program. I apologize. I wasn't trying to make it sound like you were trying to work people through a certain process that had an endpoint that was at a certain location, right? Like the end is going to be like this, but what about the people that, go to week 2, but they get to week 2 at 10 weeks in and they're still doing okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I make it really clear in the beginning of the book is that I don't care if you finish it. Like the point is not finishing it. The point, like my heart for you in this book is for you to connect your heart with the Lord and find healing. However that looks like, whatever that looks like. If it takes you a week, if you don't even finish the book, like my heart for you is that you'll connect with the Lord and that through that connection you'll find healing.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming to Adoption Happy Hour and being our guest here. It's been a great conversation. What I'd like to do is shut off the recording and everybody who's interested can then enter into a Q&A if you're open to it, Anita, if they have any questions for you. We usually do the Q&As offline from the recordings because sometimes people have more sensitive things they'd like to discuss. But again, thank you so much. Our heartfelt appreciation for that. And for everybody who has joined us, just stick around here. We'll be back for the Q&A. We're not leaving anywhere. We're just going to end the recording and hope to see you next time on Adoption Happy Hour and also the events that Beth laid out at the beginning of the program here that are going on throughout the month. Just a reminder that NAAP does offer these opportunities for coming together. So we'll talk to you soon, everybody. Thanks so much. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you.